So this Dvar Torah is dedicated to Oleg Seitsky. It's been a long time coming. So in Parshat Vayigash, this week's parasha, the Torah tells us about the passing of Yaakov Avinu. And the way the Torah describes his passing is very interesting. It says, Vayigva vayasef elamav. He expired and he was gathered unto his nation. So Rabbi Yochanan points out that it doesn't use the language vayamot. Interestingly, it doesn't use the word death. Usually it would be he expired and he died and he was gathered unto his nation. So why does the Torah omit the word vayamot? So says Rabbi Yochanan in a very provocative way that Yaakov Avinu lo met. Masechet Ta'anit Daf Hei Amud Bet, Rabbi Yochanan says Yaakov never died. So the Gemara right away asks, what do you mean? Did they eulogize him for nothing? Was he mummified for naught? V'chi b'chinam safdu saftaya v'chantu chantaya. So what do you mean he didn't die? So Rabbi Yochanan says, look, mikra ani doresh. I'm just interpreting a pasuk. I found a pasuk in Yirmiyahu where the pasuk talks about Yaakov Avinu and his children. And over there it says, Ve'ata and you, al tira avdi Yaakov. Don't fear my servant Yaakov, al tichat Israel, and don't tremble, Israel. Ki hineni moshiacha merachok. I'm going to save you from a distance, ve'et zaracha, and your descendants me'eretz shivyam. So you see in this pasuk that the Navi is promising that Yaakov and his descendants will return from their land of captivity. But because the pasuk uses Yaakov and his descendants together in the same pasuk, Hineni moshiacha merachok, you ve'et zaracha me'eretz shivyam, both of them. So from here you see that there's a connection between Yaakov and his children. Mazar'o b'chayim, as long as his descendants are alive, he's alive. So this is not very much understood what Rabbi Yochanan is saying. Okay, there's a connection between Yaakov. It's a very nice idea that once his children are alive, he's considered alive. But why are you mentioning this by Yaakov more than anybody else? What does it really mean that Yaakov Avinu did not die? So I want to explain this based on a conversation that we see in last week's parasha. Yaakov and Paro have a very interesting conversation. Yaakov comes to meet Paro. Yosef brings him. And as the Ramban explains, Paro sees a withered old man. He may have never seen someone look so old. So he right away asks him, Kama yemesh nechayecha? How old are you? We know that Paro celebrated his birthday. The only person we see in the Chumash who celebrates their own birthday, makes a birthday party. Right? So he's very obsessed with age. He asks, Yaakov, how old are you? So the response of Yaakov is very strange, especially for one of the avot, one of the forefathers, one of the patriarchs who we look up to. He says, Me'at v'ra'im ayu yemesh nechayai. The days of my life were few and terrible. And it's very weird for Yaakov Avinu to express himself in such a depressing, negative way about his own life. Why is Yaakov Avinu spilling so much information to Yaakov? Just say you lived 130 years, like you tell him. Why are you mentioning me'at v'ra'im? So the truth is that by Yaakov Avinu we see this amazing quality of how connected he was with his child Yosef. Because when he hears the news that Yosef was allegedly killed, Taraf Yosef, so it says, Vayma'en leitnachem, he refuses to be consoled. Vayomer, and he says, Ki ered el bini avel she'ola, I'm going to go down and descend to the grave after my son. And Yaakov really was not very much alive all the time that in his mind Yosef was dead. As we see in the conversation between Yehuda and Yosef, when Yehuda is negotiating for the return of Binyamin, so he tells him that if my father sees if he sees that there's no that the child is not going to come home, vamet, he's going to die. Right, what does this mean? Why is he going to die? So Yehuda is telling Yosef that my father is so connected to Binyamin. This is his only child left over from that wife that he loved so much, and so he's going to die. Kipshuto, he will drop dead. Because when Binyamin is gone, Yaakov will drop dead. He's so connected to Binyamin. V'nafsho kishura v'nafsho. Right? You're going to bring my father down into the grave. That's what Yehuda is negotiating to Yosef. He's saying, I have to bring back Binyamin. and I indeed became an Arab. I guaranteed it. Right? So this is Yehuda's argument to Yosef. But you see Yehuda saying that my father is so connected to his child Binyamin that when Binyamin doesn't come back, he himself, Kipshuto, will die. And what's Yosef's response? Yosef's response is immediately to say, Ani Yosef, ha'od avichai, I am Yosef, you sold me. And in my father's eyes, I'm dead. Is my father still alive? Of course, he knew his father was alive. They just talked about it. But what he's saying is my father really alive? He's not alive. It's a rhetorical question. He's dead inside. Yaakov Avinu was dead inside as long as Yosef wasn't around. And therefore, when they finally divulged the news that Yosef is still alive, the pasuk uses the language of Vatichi ruach Yaakov avihem. He lived. Vatichi ruach Yaakov avihem. He lived. And then Vaychi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim 17 shana. The beginning of this week's parasha, he lived 17 years in Mitzrayim. It becomes the best 17 years of his life because finally he has Yosef back, because he had a new awakening, a new life. He was dead inside and he came back to life. He had a resurrection. And this is where we see that Yaakov Avinu was so connected to his children. And if his child's dead, he's considered dead. But as long as his child is still alive, he's alive. And he feels that so strongly. And that's why when he tells Paro, and he answers him how old he is, he says, it's not so simple. You're asking me how old I am. You want to know Yimei Shnei Megurai? You want to know how long I traversed the earth, how long I walked around? Yeah, that was 130 years. But that's not a good answer to your question. You know why I look so old? My life wasn't lived to